Hey, what's going on, everyone? Beer Today, Beer Tomorrow is back once again, and this time the crew is in Bushwick, Brooklyn for a sit-down with Marshall Thompson of Braven Brewing. Now, please don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes, and if you like what you hear, give us a good review too. We appreciate your support. And also, don't forget to check out Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Now, this latest episode is jam-packed with good stories and BTBT exclusives. So grab some brews and sit back and enjoy. Cheers.
Hey guys, what's going on? This is Beer Today, Beer Tomorrow, back here in Brooklyn. Braven Brewing, very excited to be here. I got my two BTBT goons with me. Justin, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on, man? Glad to be back.
Absolutely. And Perry, welcome back. How you doing?
Pretty great. Glad to do a second round.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we have a very, very special guest that we'd like to introduce. Sir, please introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Marshall Thompson from Braven Brewing Company.
Awesome. So Bushwick. I mean, so much history here. I know that in the 1800s there were something like over 24 breweries, something like that. And then by 1904, I think there was about 44 breweries in between Bushwick and Williamsburg. And then post World War II. Businesses started shutting down, and I think up until maybe the 70s was when the last remaining breweries open. And now here we are today, and you guys are here. You guys are kind of continuing that. I guess this is the Renaissance, the Bushwick beer Renaissance. I mean, it's the first brewery in what, like 40 years?
Yeah, that was our goal when we started working on the business back in 2013. We wanted to be the first brewery in Bushwick in almost 40 years. Rheingold was the last one that closed in 1976, which is it was about 3 blocks from where we are right now, right off of Flushing Avenue. So that was our slogan for our Kickstarter when we very first started. It was bringing brewing back to Bushwick. That was our slogan. That was our goal from the beginnings, to open a brewery here in the neighborhood. It's taken us a long time. We have our Bushwick Pilsner. We have a couple other styles that we've brewed so far. And we are getting very close to finally being able to have our own physical brewery in the neighborhood, hopefully by next summer. That's our goal.
Okay. Wow, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Looking forward to that. And that obviously will be locally here, not too far from where we are right now.
Correct. Yeah, our goal is to open it just off the Morgan stop. So if you know where Roberta's Pizza is, it's going to be within a hop, skip, and a jump from there.
Always likes pizza and beer, right?
Yeah.
Pizza and
Perfect
beer.
Combination.
Cannot beat that.
Perfect combination. You know what the lines are like at Roberta's anyway. So
Come
by for a beer, head over for your pizza.
Yeah.
Perfect. And now you say we, so, and there's you and there's another co-owner, correct?
Correct. Yeah, Eric Feldman, who couldn't be here today. He was actually up in Saratoga Springs, where we're currently brewing our beer. Mm-hmm. He brewed our new style. We're going to be launching in about 3 weeks. It's called Skyliner IPA. It's a West Coast style IPA. A little bigger than our other styles we've done so far. Our white IPA is only 5%. This one's 7.0, and we dry hop with Mosaic, which is kind of a trendy hop these days. Sure. So it's going to be kind of more in the lines of like a Two Hearted or a Sculpin, something like that. A little bigger, punchier, a little more bitter.
Okay. No, going back to the brewery that's going to open, is it going to have a tasting room?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're fortunate with kind of our business model. We're very much following in Brooklyn Brewery's footsteps, where they started off brewing upstate and then eventually opened a brewery in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. I think it was 9 years before they had a brewery in Brooklyn. Oh, wow. They're brewing everything in Utica. So we're up in Saratoga Springs. Mm-hmm. So our idea is to be able to keep brewing upstate, keep doing like the bottles like we're drinking right now, the kegs that we're doing from there. Because the bottling line alone at Saratoga Springs is, I want to say like 4,000 or 5,000 square feet.
Wow.
Just the bottling line.
That sounds awesome.
So it's pretty massive, and there's no way we'd be able to afford anything like that in Brooklyn anytime soon. Mm-hmm. So the advantage of being able to brew up there is that we can still do bottles, and then when we have our brewery down here, we'll have a 10-barrel brewing system. That's the idea, to have something that's like small and you can be really creative with it. You can do a lot of different batch styles and kind of keep trying new things and do things seasonally, do collaborations with restaurants, record labels, artists, like everybody that we'd like to hang out with and be associated with. It's fun. It'll be fun to finally bring them into our own place, which we've been dying to do for 4.5 years at this point.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So how many employees do you have? I know you have Eric.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's been me and Eric since April of 2013.
Okay.
And we finally just hired our first salesperson.
Okay.
His name's Abe Rodriguez. He started about a month ago, a little over a month ago, maybe 5 weeks ago.
Okay.
So we have a lot of great partners that we work with. They aren't technically employees, but we work with a really great brewery up in Saratoga Springs called Old Saratoga Brewing Company. And then we have a distributor based here pretty much in Bushwick called SKI Beer Distributors.
SKI Beer Distributors.
Yeah.
Okay.
They've been in the craft beer game for a really long time. They were like Brooklyn Brewery's first distributor. They brought Dogfish Head to New York City. They brought Sierra Nevada to New York City. And they're also really big in import, like Belgian styles. They do Delirium. They do a lot of German styles like Radeberger, Hofbrau. So they only do like higher end craft and import beer, and they've been amazing to us. We love working with them. I know at some other distributors, like bigger ones, we would be lost in the shuffle under some other higher priorities, but we've always been a very high priority for them, and they've been excellent to us. We were very fortunate to sign a distribution contract with them before we'd ever brewed a batch of beer.
Wow.
Professionally.
Wow.
Nice.
Wow.
That's kind of a funny long story, I guess. When Eric and I both decided we wanted to do this for real, not just home brewing like we were doing in East Village, we're like, all right, we're actually going to do this. I left the marketing agency world behind and said, I'm going to go and commit to this. So I went back to bartending, get back to like being in the industry, and I worked at a couple different bars in Williamsburg, and I worked at one in Fort Greene, another one back in Williamsburg then. And when I was at the one in Fort Greene, it was a German bar, and I would just hand out my business card to every rep that would come through. Like, I'm opening a brewery. I'm opening a brewery. And most of them were like, why are you bothering me? Like,
Yeah.
I don't care. But there was one guy named Brian Lucrezia who works for SKI, and he would come by pretty often, at least once a week, and he would ask me how it was going. I'm like, it's coming along. I'd have like little advances, little wins, like every time I'd see him. And he's like, cool. I'm really glad to hear like it's coming along. And then one time he brought his manager in, and the manager is like, oh yeah, I heard you have like that you're working on this brewery. I'm like, yeah. And I showed him a little mock-up of what we wanted to do cans at the time. And this like what our cans are going to look like. He's like, holy shit, those look sick. Those are amazing. Why don't you guys come to this other event that we're doing next week? I'm like, okay. And it was a launch for a German Kolsch that they were doing at Radegast. So Eric and I went, and we met most of the SKI sales team. They were all there, all drinking for free, of course. Not going to turn that down. And so we got to meet like the head of sales and all like the regional managers for the territory, and we were just like hanging out like we've been friends for a while. It was kind of a cool vibe. They're very welcoming, and they're like, "Wow, you heard about you, like Braven. That sounds pretty cool. Like you like your logo, looks cool." And they're like, "Why don't you come meet like the owners of SKI?" I'm like, "Okay, sure." Like have this informational meeting, and so then we went and met with them, and we had maybe 4 bottles of homebrew. Like one was a white IPA. We had a black IPA at the time. We had maybe a 12-page pitch deck that we were trying to show to investors, and a pretty cool logo. That was about all we had with us. And we knew we want to be based in Bushwick, and like our resumes. And that was it. It was still just a dream. And they're like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. I think we could use you. I think you'd be good for our portfolio. So we're going to work on a contract. So let us know if you're still interested. And we're like, sure, okay, yeah, we'll think about it. We're weighing a lot of options here. And we're like, okay, yeah, that sounds good. That could work. Yeah. And we're like, we don't have a brewery yet. And we're like, no, we work with this great brewery up in Saratoga Springs. I'm sure they'd be happy to work with you.
Right.
And we're like, yeah, we talked with them before. They brew 110 barrels at a time. I think that might be too much for us. Like, who's gonna buy our beer? But I know like 5 bars in Bushwick that are interested, and they're like, don't worry, if you brew it, we'll sell it.
Wow.
Like,
Wow.
That's awesome.
Right
that
on,
was
man. Right on.
a huge vote of confidence. We were like, wow, really? Okay, you really, really do believe in us.
Wow.
And so like we like shook their hands and walked outside, went down a block, turned the corner, like looked over our shoulder. We were out of sight. We were like, did that just fucking happen? We were like fist pumping, like high
yeah,
fives,
man.
Sure.
jump kicks in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck
Couldn't believe it. We're like, oh my god, I think we just were offered a distribution contract.
yeah. Wow.
So wow.
So yeah, then things happened pretty quickly from there. We got set up with Old Saratoga, and then we ended up going up there. I think it was December 8th, 2014, when we brewed a double batch of white IPA. So a double for us is like 220 barrels at a time. So that's a whole other crazy story.
No,
Do you want me to just keep going?
keep
I feel
going,
like I'm
man.
just like,
No.
These are great stories.
These are great stories. Yeah. And
so
we got beer. We're good. So.
Yeah. And we got a whole fridge full of them, so we don't need to go anywhere for a while. So this was quite an experience. So we knew we wanted to do the white IPA to start. And when we decided, we originally were going to do a black beer and a white beer. Our logo is black and white. That was kind of our shtick. But then when we realized it was 110 barrels, we were like, no way we can launch with two styles. We literally don't have enough money to brew 2 of these at the same time. So we're like, okay, we're just going to do the white IPA. I think it's going to be more appealing to the public. So we had a recipe that we brewed probably 20 times in Eric's apartment on 5 gallons, in a bucket. And we really nailed it. I think we dialed it in. Happy with it. And so then we went back and forth with the Old Saratoga team on scaling it from 5 gallons to 6,000 gallons, which is terrifying.
It sounds like it. Yeah.
It's a big
Because
step.
they don't do pilot batches.
Oh.
It's all or nothing. They don't have like a 3-barrel system or a 10-barrel. It's like, nope, it's everything.
Wow.
So yeah, we're like, wow. So we went back and forth, and the white IPA is a hybrid of a Belgian white and an American IPA. So we use flaked wheat, coriander, and orange peel from the Belgian white half, and Citra, Cascade, and Columbus, and American ale yeast from kind of the American IPA side. And so, when you scale it up, they use different spices than we used at home. Some things are maybe more fresh. The hops might be a little different. So we kind of went back and forth on the grain bill and how much of the spices we wanted to use. And so we have ended up cutting the spices in half. Or like they think that the spices they have are a little more potent than the ones they're sitting at like the homebrew store. Might be a little sitting on that shelf for too long. So we're like, okay, if you really think it should only be half, then we'll just do half. We trust you on this.
Better to be conservative than throw
Yeah.
it out the first time.
Right, and that's it. Like we had enough money for 1 batch. If we screw up this batch,
Wow.
Yeah.
that's the end of the company.
Talk about
you're-
pressure, huh?
Yeah,
You're
bet-
over
bet the
before you
farm on
started.
That one, right? So.
Yeah. So yeah, a little bit of pressure.
Yeah. Sleepless nights.
Not quite yet. After we drove up there in like early December, Saratoga is like 4 hours north of here, so it's always a little colder up there. So we got there the night before. Started at I think like 7:30 the next morning. We started brewing. Things are going well. We're adding the hops, we're adding the grains, like super excited. And they do double batches, so they do 110 barrels, and then as they're knocking out, they start mashing in the next one. So they kind of keep going with the second batch, and then they end up blending the two in like these 220 barrel fermenters, like massive thing. So it all evens out between the two of them.
Right.
So after we finish the first batch, we're knocking out, get a little sample of it. Something's wrong.
Oh boy.
Something is off, and we're like, I don't know what it is. Like something is wrong with this, and we can't quite figure out what it is yet. And they're like, well, you got 30 minutes until the next one starts.
Wow.
If you want to change something, you better figure it out soon.
Wow.
And we're like,
Wow.
all right. So we like walked across the street pretty much in like dead silence, just like contemplating all these bad things that can happen. What happens if we screw this up? And get like a sandwich, bring it back, eat the sandwich again in silence. We're like, what do you think it is? What do you think it is? Is it the hops? Is it like the grains? Is it spices? So got back in, tried it again, and like the particulate had kind of settled a little more in it by that time. So we had these glasses that were like maybe 4 ounces, and the hops and the matter kind of like fell out of it a little bit. So you could taste it. It wasn't quite as green. And I said, it's the spices. There's just too much spice. I don't think we should put as much spice. And they're like, well, how much do you want to take out? I'm like, cut it entirely from the next one.
Wow.
Just don't put any more in.
So then you get half of half total, basically.
Yeah. So we ended up doing a quarter of the total amount. And they're like, okay, we'll do that. Whatever you want. Like, we're here to make whatever beer you want. So we're like, I hope that's it.
Wow.
It was just the bitterness from the coriander. I think that was what was doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because it was bitter, but it wasn't from the hops. I could tell it was not the hop bitterness. It was more of a spice bitter.
Mm-hmm.
So as we're like about to start the next batch, we realized that there's this blizzard coming through Saratoga, and both of us were still working jobs, so we had to be back for work the next day. And if we stayed another like hour or two, we'd be snowed in.
Oh,
Right.
man.
And like the roads would be completely shut down. And so we're like, we got a jet, or we're not going to make it home. So good luck, guys. I hope this works.
Wow.
And so
Wings and a prayer, right?
yeah, yeah. So
It's dramatic.
we drove home like in crazy icy winds, like blowing us off the highway. Still not sure how our beer turned out, and we had to wait 3 weeks for all of it to blend together to see how it was going to come out. And during that time, that's when I had the sleepless nights and the sweaty palms.
Oh, man.
Like just talking to anybody about it, I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea
Wow.
how
Must
this
was-
is going to turn out.
So much second guessing. Was it that? Should I have done this? Should I have done that?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh.
Yeah, and I was. You're helpless at that point. There's nothing you can do. Just wait.
like torturing yourself, probably, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was cool that we had done it, and like we had a launch party lined up. We had like press. We had people working on this party. We had DJs lined up. We had all this stuff, and we're like, what if it tastes like shit? Like what? What if it's absolute garbage and we can't serve it to anybody? We have to cancel everything and dump it down the drain, with a huge amount of money just literally jumping down the drain too.
Right.
So that was us like freaking out for about 3 weeks, and then Eric went up on December 30th. So like about 3 weeks later, our goal was always to have beer by the end of 2014. That we like really wanted at the beginning of the year. We're like, we're gonna do it. So December 30th, he was up there, and no, sorry, it was the 31st. It was the 31st.
Oh, wow.
Literally,
Yeah, it was
New Year's
literally.
Eve.
He went up the 30th. He tried it on the morning of the 31st, and I was here. I was still bartending, so I couldn't go up there. But he was in the tasting room. They poured like some samples from a keg, and he called me while he was tasting it. He's like, "All right, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try it." I'm like, "Okay." I'm like sitting in my bed, like still like sweating.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's perfect. It's exactly what we tried to make.
Wow.
It's what we brewed at home. They nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, I was just fist pumping in my room, just by myself, just ecstasy.
Wow.
And so he came down that day, brought like a six still with him. We were in an office downstairs from here, and like we just cheered some of our. We have some growlers, some like 32-ounce growlers. We like cheered a couple of them and chugged it down. And that was one of the best feelings of all time.
Wow.
crazy story.
That's a great
Crazy.
story. Yeah.
But a great New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It was. Yeah, that was an amazing way to cap off that year. And that was just the beginning.
Yeah. It's the beginning of the adventure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, can you rewind a bit?
Yeah.
How did you get into home brewing?
Sure. So Eric and I have been friends now for 17 years.
Okay.
His high school friend was my college roommate. So Eric would come and crash in my dorm room during college, and he and another one of our friends who went to high school with my friend Dan, he would literally stink up the place. It was pretty awful. It was like 4 dudes and a lot of Chinese food and weed, pretty much.
Yeah.
It was pretty ripe
Sounds
in
about right.
there.
Yeah.
But after college, kind of our two groups of friends merged, and that's when I started to get to know Eric better. He went to Georgetown Law School,
Okay.
and I went to school in D.C. at American University. So
Okay. Are you a DC guy or
I'm from Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania?
Yeah, but I ended up living in D.C. for about 9 years.
Okay. Because
So-
we're PA people.
Oh, okay, Lancaster, Pennsylvania is
Okay.
where I
Okay.
grew up.
Oh, Amish guy.
Yeah,
Amish guy.
yeah.
Okay.
Can't you tell?
Uh-huh.
So we ended up going to a lot of punk rock shows together. There's a lot of really great music venues in DC, and one in particular is called the Black Cat,
Yeah.
which I lived across the street from that, and that was basically my second home, or basically my first home. And I would just like go home to sleep, but I would
Right.
spend pretty much every other minute at the Black Cat. And Eric and I had 2 bar stools at the end of the bar, where that was like where we'd sit all the time, and we would drink the best beer that they had on tap. And at the time, that was Newcastle. Newcastle Brown Ale was like our favorite, and we were just down pints of Newcastle like every night. So, fast forward to 2008. We both moved up here around that same time, kind of independently. He had finished grad school. I had owned a clothing store in DC, and that closed with the recession. So I was just like, I'm done. I'm moving.
Okay. So you had entrepreneurial experience.
Yeah, I had an entrepreneurial failure under my belt, so I kind of knew what I was doing, kind of.
Or at least not what to do, not what not to do. Right?
Yeah, what you don't do is open a retail store. Just don't do that. It's really, really hard. This is hard, but that was brutal. And that's a whole other
Sure.
podcast.
Sure.
So,
Well, you can't succeed if you don't fail, right?
Yeah.
I'd much prefer not
Well,
to.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, no, it wasn't pleasant. So then I ended up going back to school. I went to Fordham, got my MBA in marketing. That's what I really loved the most about my store was the creative advertising marketing aspects of it. And at this time, Eric was working for a law firm, a big international law firm. And when I was in grad school, one night I was sitting in the computer lab just on GChat, and for some reason, I thought I needed to have a hobby. I was just kind of bored with school, and I didn't have anything else going on besides like just going to concerts or something. So I sent him a link to a brown ale kit because I was like, Eric, wouldn't it be fun to do a brown ale? Like we drank all those Newcastles back in the day. And so I sent it to him, and he said, you have to be shitting me. I have that same website open in another tab right now because I was thinking about home brewing.
Get out of
Like,
here.
I'm serious. We have the screenshot of the GChat, like to memorialize that moment.
That's an amazing. That's
So
pretty,
we're like,
That's
yeah.
serendipitous.
fuck, I guess we need to. Yeah, well, that was like, should we call it Serendipity Brewing Company? or like Kismet, or what is it? Yeah. So we were like, all right, I guess we need to start doing this. But so at the time, we were both living in the East Village. I was at 8th and C, and he was in Stuytown at 14th and A. And so we just called it East Village Brewing Company, the EVBC. And that was when there was a V train in New York. So our letters were like the circles, the EVBC.
Right.
And they were orange and blue. It was a pretty cool logo.
Okay.
We always do cool logos.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that was like just for fun. We did that for about 4 years. We had a lot of. I think the most fun part of that was inviting our friends over, and they would always come over to have like a little party whenever we had a new style. Some of them were great. Some of them were not great. But everyone always had a good time. And we would always make sure they brought other beer too in case the beers were terrible. We're like, why don't you bring a 6-pack too, just in case?
Now, was there one that especially stood out as being terrible?
Yeah, we tried to do a Russian Imperial Stout that just did not ferment the way that we needed it to. If it doesn't eat up all the sugar, it ended up being just super sweet, like really, really sweet and not nearly boozy enough as it should be. So we tried to do other things with it. We're like, why don't you make like a beer float with ice cream in it or something?
Yeah.
I think everyone saw through that. And they're like, it's just not a good beer, guys. And we're like, yeah, we know. But people, I think our best one was we did Hefeweizen. That was really, really good. Okay. And that was featured on this homebrew tour that a local guy, Josh Bernstein, was doing at the time.
Okay.
He's since become like a New York City beer author. He has 3 or 4 books now.
Yep.
And we were one of the first apartments he did on his homebrew tour in 2010.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he like wrote about us in his blog, like survey or like a kind of a wrap up summary of that tour of that day. And he thought that like we had some good beers and like maybe we should look out for these guys. And then a couple of years later, when we're like, we're starting a brewery, he's like, yeah, no surprise. Everybody that I did a brew tour with all started breweries. Like Single Cut, I think those guys were on the tour way back when. Like Finback, I think like maybe the Rockaway guys. I forget all of them, but
it's like the who's who of New York beer.
Yeah, like they all started on Josh's homebrew tours.
Wow.
So he's kind of a kingmaker. I don't know. He's a lot of influence.
Sure.
And I think he gave a lot of people confidence. It gave us a lot of confidence. We're like, oh, people actually like what we're doing. Maybe we should continue doing it or
keep doing
take it to the next level.
Sure. Do you think there's a chance that the like ski guys happen to know about you maybe through that as well?
No. they never heard of Josh Bernstein before.
Oh, really? Okay. No, I was just curious because you said he later got big, so.
Yeah. I don't think they're aware of his writings.
Okay.
Yeah, and we did a different name, and so the only press that we had is kind of what we'd been talking about from Kickstarter.
Right.
We got a lot of really good press from even just the Kickstarter.
What was that process like doing the Kickstarter?
That was really fun, actually. I really enjoyed it. The first thing we did the first thing we did was write a business plan. I had some experience doing that before, so I kind of knew how to do that. A lot of things I didn't know. It was just learning as I was going through it. But at the time, I was going to Heavy Woods, which is a bar around the corner here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Heavy Woods.
Shout out to Heavy Woods.
That's where I went and just wrote the business plan, like all day, every day, and then I'd go to bartend at night. So I would do that, and then after Eric and I were like, okay, I think this kind of makes sense. It's, I don't know, it's like 40 pages long or something at this point. Then we knew like next couple steps, like we had zero money between us. So we're like, we need to do something to raise some kind of money. So we worked with a local husband and wife graphic design team called Two Arms Inc. They're also in Greenpoint. And we said, the company's called Braven. It's the head of a raven with buck antlers, and we want it to be black and white. Those are our parameters. Mm-hmm. And we gave them a bunch of inspiration of different things that we kind of liked that hopefully would play into the design. And it took about 2.5 to 3 months going back and forth to end up with something as simple and as clean as we ended up with. We're really stoked about, actually, at the end of it.
It looks great.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really done well for us. So once we came up with the logo, then we could come up with like T-shirts and like other things that kind of tie into the prizes you can do with Kickstarter, because you can't, according to the rules, you can't give away alcohol.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to come up with other things to like get people to buy into it. So we had everything from a sticker to a pint glass, keychain, T-shirt, hoodie, tote bag. I think those are all the physical things, and then like you're gonna brew a beer with us one day. And some people, the very very top one was, we'll name our brewing equipment after you. Get like the naming rights. And someone actually bought that. Like somebody we didn't know. It was a couple in Florida. They're like, we really think you guys are onto something. So next year when we have our equipment installed in the spring or so, it's gonna be named after them.
No
Wow.
shit.
It's like 4 years later. Yeah, but they've been supporters. They really believe in us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the history of Kickstarter. Like, oh, none of those things actually come into fruition.
Yeah.
But this is a successful Kickstarter
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. So so one of my college friends, and one actually became Eric's friend too. He was a director, so he volunteered to like shoot it for us, and we just went to other businesses around the neighborhood, like Northeast Kingdom when that was open, AP Cafe. I forget, there might have been some other. Oh, the Sampler when that was open too, and did like some shots around the neighborhood of like our friends, but then just kind of neighborhood scenes, and we talked a lot about the history of the brewing in the neighborhood. So that was Bushwick then. It had this great brewing tradition. This is Bushwick now, and we want to bring some of that history to current Bushwick. And so that really, I think, struck a chord with people. Like they didn't know. Most people still don't know about the history of what was here in Bushwick for a century, like 100 years. This was the place in like America for brewing beer, and it only took one generation to forget, which is pretty wild, I think.
It is.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And it's interesting to see the correlation, I think, between when the last brewery closed in '76 and kind of the decline of Bushwick as a neighborhood, because it was a very well-to-do, middle-class, working-class neighborhood. Lots of jobs at the brewery.
Yeah.
Breweries around the whole neighborhood. And then '76 it closed, and then there was the blackout of '77, and that's when the whole neighborhood burned to the ground, pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when there are no jobs. Like people get really pissed off,
Absolutely.
and they resort to violence, and it's unfortunate. And then it took 40 years for it to kind of rebuild again. So yeah, in that time, people had kind of forgotten, and all those buildings had been torn down. There are, I believe, two breweries still standing. One of which was the Otto Huber Brewery, which is now the Well, the bar
Mhm.
on
Oh, okay.
Mesril. That's where we actually had our launch party in 2015.
It's a nice place.
Great
Yeah, it was really fun. Nice, actually, that poster, our rollout party.
A nice little rollout poster on the wall.
Yeah. So that was January 2015 we did that, and then the other brewery that's still standing is called it was the Ulmer Brewery. It's right across the street from where Rheingold was. It's at the corner of Beaver and Belvedere. So again,
Okay.
it's not too far from here. So those are only two that are still standing, but yeah, that's why it's easy to forget if everything's just kind of torn down and forgotten. It's like it never existed. All those the only ones that like still exist, I think Schaefer is just about the only one that still exists as a brand, because that was bought by PBR and
That's right.
moved to Milwaukee.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that the name Braven in part derives from is that a tattoo on your shoulder that combines both your parents' family coat of arms?
Yeah,
Is that correct?
Yeah, you've done some research.
A little bit.
It's
a little
not-
bit.
Yeah, we don't put that out there too much, but yeah. So in 2010, I was interested in getting a tattoo that kind of represented both sides of my family. My family's very much always been interested in genealogy and heraldry. My grandfather in particular was a genealogist. He researched our family lineage back to Revolutionary War and back to Mayflower and
Wow.
that kind of stuff. So he was always into that, and I thought it'd be really interesting to have something that honors kind of both sides of my family. My mother is a very right brain artist. My father is left brain banker lawyer. Like almost couldn't be more opposite.
Yeah.
And I'm like a creative business person. So like somewhere I think in between the two of them.
You're the hybrid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I'm kind of in between. Yeah, the hybrid. So I was like, I'll get a Raven on one shoulder. Oh, so in the my mother's maiden name is Buck, so there's a Buck in their family coat of arms, obviously. And my father's side, Thompson, there are 3 ravens in the Thompson coat of arms. So I was going to get a Buck on the right side from my mom's side, and Raven on the left side from my dad's left brain side. And I was like, it would be a lot weirder and cheaper if I just got one tattoo instead of 2 of them. So that's what I ended up getting on my left shoulder.
That's interesting.
You want to get so
I got a little picture.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I got this out in San Francisco while I was visiting a friend out there, and it was just something I'd wanted for a little while. And I was like, we have some extra time. Why don't we go to this tattoo shop? He's like, I got the guy. I know the guy. Come on. And it was very spur of the moment at the time, and I just really liked it. And it's like, I should nickname it something. I should have a name for it. It's a Buck and a Raven, so I guess it's a Braven. And
Look at that.
yeah. So, yeah, like I said, Eric and I were in the East Village when we were doing our hobby homebrewing. But then in the next couple of years, I had moved out to Bushwick because I really liked it out here. And then we found out about the history. We're like, oh man, this is where we have to have it. This is perfect. A lot of warehouse space, a lot of opportunity for development, and to put a new business in here, I think would be appreciated. But like, we can't obviously name it East Village Brewing Company anymore. Like, it doesn't make much sense. So I'm like, I got this weird tattoo. What do you think about Braven as a name? He's like, I think so. That could work. And I'm like, I know it's like kind of my family thing, but when we kind of made this together, we created the brand together. So that logo is not just like a copy of my tattoo. It's us kind of working on it together. So this is kind of like our family kind of crest,
Right.
the Braven family together.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, so he's still very much part of the company and like the name of the
Absolutely.
company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, B is at the beginning of the alphabet. So whenever anybody lists things alphabetically, it's like
Right
a
up there.
menu,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're at the top.
Yeah.
That works out too.
It's 2 syllables. It's very easy. It's a made-up word, so it's good for search, like Google.
Yeah.
It's,
No branding.
It's kind of a catchy word
Yeah.
too. Braven.
It
you know?
sounds strong, sounds kind of masculine. I get people that they get all kinds of interpretations of what that means. Because like I said, we don't normally put things out there too much about like, this is what Braven is. We did kind of like do kind of a backstory, try to explain it, but it doesn't come across very well, I think. So we're going to end up scrapping that. It was a little too marketing.
So no mascots at your rollout party.
Yeah. No mascots. But the thing, people always say like, I love your logo. It looks like Harry Potter, or it looks like Game of Thrones. We get Game of Thrones a lot. And people like love it that they can associate it with that. My favorite story though is that we did an event at this bar in kind of Gramercy area. It was a bar called Mason Jar. We were their beer of the month, and so we were doing this like tasting and drinking with some people, and the chef comes out of the kitchen. He said, "Are you the Braven guys?" I'm like, yeah, sure. Those are our shirts. And he's like, "I love your logo. It's so cool. It's like a Brazilian heavy metal soccer team." And like, just kind of sat there for a second, and we're like, sure, yeah, okay. Like, I guess this guy is really into Brazilian soccer and heavy metal.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like whatever people like, they kind of transpose that and put it onto the logo and interpret it however they want to.
But that's kind of cool though about the it's letting
awesome.
people, yeah.
So that's why we kind of like try not to over explain it too much. Like, it's whatever you want it to be.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
Do we just ruin it? Like,
I'm
no,
okay with that.
It's a very awesome logo, and it's definitely very distinct. Like I think it's one of the cooler logos that I've seen, especially on the craft beer scene. Like you'll remember it. You see it once, you're gonna remember the Braven logo. It
Cool,
is
thank
pretty
you.
cool. Yeah, no problem.
It's good for tap handle recognition.
Yeah. We it took a while to come up with our tap handles. Actually, at first we had just generic tap handles because we couldn't afford like custom tap handles. Actually, they're in like the bin right up there, like just generic white ones, and we had just a sticker.
Those
in
like the
front of it.
original ones.
Yeah, you guys can take one if you want. We're not using them anymore. People like them though because it was just our logo, and they're like, that's just a cool logo. I don't care if it's on a generic looking handle.
Yeah.
They just liked it. And then we ended up getting a loan from the SBA, so we were able to expand a little bit and flesh out a few things, so we were able to get custom tap handles. And then I wonder if I actually can I get one out? Can I show
Yeah,
you?
sure. Grabbing the tap handles. BTBT in Brooklyn.
So this is the generic one.
Oh. Oh,
which is fine.
Yeah.
It's
that
just,
actually
it's
looks
just
pretty
white,
Yeah.
but with our sticker on it.
Mm-hmm.
Plays the logo strength though.
It does.
Yeah. So it served its purpose for when we had just one style of beer. It was just a white IPA, and it was just the name of the company on it.
That's pretty cool.
So then we started introducing more styles of beers, and then people were like, well, which one is this? So we worked with a website literally called taphandles.com.
Okay.
It sells itself.
Yeah. So we ended up making these, which I think are a little more distinctive.
Oh, those are quite a bit cooler, I'd
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, so these are the styles of the beer, and we use magnets. So
Oh,
they
wow.
just like
Oh, cool.
Super clever.
pop in there.
Yeah.
I actually have that magnet on my fridge at
Oh,
home.
you have?
Yes,
Okay.
I do.
Cool. Yeah. So we give these out like all the time. So we do them for every beer style that we've done.
And for the
Nice.
folks who
But-
can't see that, that's the yellow Pilsner magnet.
Yeah. But the issue with these now, though, there's always an issue. You want to like feel the top of that tap handle all the way at the top there.
Okay.
It's pretty sharp, actually.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's cut steel, like laser cut steel.
Yeah.
So it's not so bad when if you pull the tap handle from where it's supposed to be pulled in
Yeah.
the middle. But anytime there's a bar that has low tap handles right in front of the bar or like on the bartender side of the bar, they're reaching over the tap handle
Yeah.
and scraping the shit out of
Oh,
their
yeah.
forearm.
Oh, wow.
That's sharp.
Yeah. That's not a
So-
joke.
this is badass, but it's sharp.
Yeah, pretty good weapon. So we've heard from a few people that they've been very disappointed by it.
So you basically have like a high style and a low style then.
Yeah. So it works well if it's like up here, but above the bar. But when it's kind of down at bar level, yeah, people are not very happy with us about that.
Okay.
So we've been working on just rounding the buck horns a little bit so they're not quite so sharp.
Right.
So we worked it out with taphandles.com to make it less dangerous. But I have seen these, and this is pretty substantial. It's steel. It's all the way in there.
Yeah.
I've seen people rip them, like just clear off the top of it.
Oh,
Like
wow.
they like just chop it off because they've just scraped. Like that does not feel good.
Right.
Scraping along there.
Dangerous tap handles. Right?
Yeah. So it's always a learning experience.
Sure.
There's always something that can be improved and updated and tweaked. So that's next for us. We just, of course, just bought like 150 new ones, and they're like, we found a new way to round the edges. We're like, thanks, guys. Couple $1,000 too late.
Damn.
Now, can you tell me more about the design here? Because I think that's the main thing that like stood out when I looked at the beer, as like especially with your flyers over there as well.
Yeah.
Your poster. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So from the beginning, Eric and I wanted to do a type of beer brand in New York City that was, I think, pretty different from what else was out there at the time. In 2013, I think there might have been 4 or 5 breweries in New York City. So there really weren't very many at all. It was like Brooklyn Brewery, 6 Point, Kelso, and Single Cut.
Mm-hmm.
And Chelsea. I think Chelsea was there too. So, I mean,
I think Rockaway too, maybe.
yeah, it was like a couple around that time. Between 2011 and 2013, there were a couple more. And then, in the last 4 years, it's
Explode.
I think they're 34 or 35 now.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So it's nuts. But at the time, not just even in New York City, but nationwide, the craft beer labels and styles kind of felt stuck in the 90s, or even some of them back to like the 80s even, where you have like these rolling hills with rivers and hops and grain, and like that's just not New York City. Like there's nothing like that in New York City. That's not what people relate to in New York City. So we're like, we can make like a national scale looking brewery by just having better design. Like you can just have it be cleaner and make it look, I think, more professional, and tailor it more towards people in New York City. So why don't we just like strip out all the bullshit? Like just get rid of everything else and just tell people what's in the bottle. Like, cause a lot of times having worked on the other side of the bar, people like strain to look across the bar and see what bottles are there. And they're like, I don't know what that is. Give me a Stella. Like, you don't want people to work to like order your beer.
Yeah.
You want to make it easy.
You want to make it as easy as possible. So that's why we're like, let's just put the name of the beer in like big letters so people can read it from across the bar. And kind of took inspiration from like those old beer cans that just say like beer on it. We're like, I know what that is. I'm going to take one. And the Bushwick Pilsner, that's the script in particular was something we worked on with a different designer after Two Arms, named Johnny Sue. He was in Williamsburg, Greenpoint area too. That we gave him a lot of inspiration from old breweries like Rheingold, Schaefer, Peels, Traumers, what their labels looked like, and we wanted to kind of take some of the lettering and make it look a little bit old school, just for that one style in particular. Yeah, because there's a lot of history to that one style. And I can get into the story of this one actually.
Sure. Okay. Go for it.
Another whole story. So, does anyone else need another beer? By the way.
Yeah, I could take another beer.
I'll take another beer.
The bartender in me. There's a lot of empty bottles around here, guys. Everybody want the same thing and mix it up?
Can I try the white?
I'll try the IPA.
Yeah, I'll try the Pilsner.
Cool. Grab the fire there.
Cool. Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Thank you much. Cool.
Oh, yeah. Here. Why don't you try out this super cool brand?
Oh,
opener.
yeah. We got the awesome
like to get
branded
videos or
opener
something.
here. Yeah. Good.
That's
That's
you put it
the,
across the top
Yeah, put it across the top.
and pull back.
Like this?
Yep.
Yeah, man.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that's easy.
There you go. It's so lightweight.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So back when we were doing some research on the brewing in the Bushwick area, there was an article that was written for Brewing Techniques magazine, I think in 1996, that was then transposed online to a kind of janky looking website. It kind of looked like GeoCities almost. And the author, Ben Jankowski, he went into the whole history of brewing in Bushwick, and that's where we got a lot of inspiration for the history and the styles that were here. And he had a lot of personal correspondences with the brewers throughout the 20th century, of like Rheingold and Schaefer and Peels and Traumers in particular. And he had a link about halfway through his article. It said, click here if you want to brew a Bushwick style Pilsner at home. We're like, oh, sure, I want to do that. So we click through, and he has a chart pretty much of all of the grains, hops, ABV, SRM, IBUs, like all the alphabet soup of how these other breweries made their beers. And they're all Pilsners back in like early 20th century. And he said, if you want to brew a Bushwick style Pilsner, here's how they did it. And so we're like, that's what we're going to do. And so we brewed it as close as we could to those four different styles. We kind of took our favorite elements out of each of them and ended up with a 5.5%, I believe 35 IBU. I'd have to check this again. It's been a little bit. Yeah, 35. Pilsner, so a little higher ABV, little higher bitterness. And we also used, I believe, 12% flaked corn, flaked maize in there too, because that's what they did back in the day, and that's what we're going to do then too. So that's how we ended up doing the Bushwick Pilsner. And it's not just the name of a brewery or a name of a style. It's actually a style that was brewed in the neighborhood. So it's a historical
lots of
style.
history.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's a little higher alcohol and a little higher IBUs, a little higher bitterness.
Just a modern take.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, modern take on a classic. Yeah, it's very tasty. I definitely enjoy the Pilsner, and I definitely enjoying the white IPA for sure. So the white IPA that was rated by I believe it was Metro as one of the top 5 local NYC beers, perfect for summer drinking. Right?
Yeah.
That's pretty solid praise, and it's great. It's smooth and it's tasty, and it's not one of those, sometimes IPAs can be a little too heavy. They can be good, but they're a little, you want a beer that you can continuously drink. And I do like this. I like this quite a bit. I had a question though. So you guys, you use bold and crafty, and I think the whole phrase is bold like a buck, crafty like a raven.
Yeah.
So what exactly? So what does that phrase exactly mean for you guys?
Sure. I think bold. Well, we actually have 3 words. For us, it's actually bold, crafty, and simple. That's kind of how we make our decisions, especially for beer styles and for branding in particular. Simple isn't very catchy, but for internally, that's what we use. So bold and crafty. Bold is how we want our packaging and beer styles to kind of stand out. So if you put like our 6-packs in a grocery store on a shelf, they're bold in that they will just jump right off the shelf because it's just there's a high contrast when you see that versus like other 6-packs that have just a ton of shit going on.
Yeah, they're clean.
Yeah, you can just see it from across the. I've actually seen it from outside of stores. You can like look in. You're like, there it is. I can see it all the way like 30 feet away. Crafty for us is like putting a little bit of a spin on something. Like it's doing a classic style, but then putting our own little twist on it. So instead of launching with just a straight IPA, we're like, let's do a white IPA. No one in New York City was doing a white IPA in 2014, as far as I know. And that's what we ended up doing, like with the black pale ale too. Like you can do a pale ale, or let's do like one simple twist, like a black pale ale. So that's kind of where crafty kind of comes from. We try to be slightly off the beaten path, and then simple kind of goes back to the branding, like
The look,
very
the feel,
straightforward and clean, recognizable, memorable, kind of sticks in your head. So that's kind of where, but literally it came from the buck and the raven. We're like bold like a buck and crafty like a raven. Well, those kind of sound like beer words too.
Yeah. It's funny. I didn't think about Game of Thrones before, but now that you said it, now I'm thinking about Game of Thrones and I'm looking at it.
Yeah, House Braven.
Yeah, House Braven. There you go. So just going back to the white IPA. So these are Citra hops that you guys use for this?
Citra, Cascade, and Columbus.
All right, and tasting a little bit of coriander in there, right?
Yep. And then we coriander and orange peel. And then we dry hop with Citra then on top, so you get a lot of the aroma with the dry hopping.
Is there a crazy story behind it, like the Pilsner, or?
No, that was a little more straightforward.
It's like, hey, nobody's doing this. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was a little surprising. I mean, we just wanted to do a historical style. An old school. The style is technically a classic American Pilsner, which if you go on like the BJCP like website, like almost nobody does a classic American Pilsner. Just it's kind of a style that's fallen out of favor. So we're like, all right, whatever. We're just gonna do this one, and turns out everybody wants to drink Pilsner. So, like that became our flagship beer so quickly. It started outpacing the white IPA like 2-1. We're like, wow, this is really a surprise. I thought everybody just wants to drink IPAs. That's what everyone says, but there are so many people that aren't just craft beer people that still like drinking beer. They just want a go-to Pilsner, and ours goes with all kinds of food. It works well in restaurants.
Absolutely.
And people still like local, even if they don't want to do like sours and IPAs and all that stuff. They still want a local beer. So that's where our Pilsner has worked really well for us.
Yeah, the Pilsner, it almost, it's like a fruity aroma that's kind of combined with a bit of like a floral hop character. It's really nice, and I think the great thing about the Pilsner is that's the beer that's going to get that you're going to get the non-craft. So the craft beer heads, they want those big, bold, sometimes over the top flavors, but regular people, when you're going out, I mean, the Pilsner, that's the type of beer that's going to convert them, so to speak, or get them to open their eyes about the potential of craft beer.
Yeah, we like to think of ourselves as like a gateway beer,
Right.
almost.
Excellent.
Yeah, like a gateway into craft. Like,
I feel like that's the new style for that. Like, it used to be something like Oberon or something a little milder, a little sweeter, right? But
Yeah.
I feel like people are remembering, if you're not drinking a lager, it's probably a Pilsner because that's what it used to be most of the world. Right?
yeah, well,
So
still,
it's kind of having a new renaissance in America, though. At least,
Right,
right,
right.
Like, people are remembering. Oh yeah, that was a thing. Like,
Yeah, I think something like 2/3 of the world's beer is Pilsner.
yeah,
Like, it's still the most popular style
Right.
in the whole world.
Yep. Yeah.
So, and it's a little difficult to do because you can't hide any flaws or inconsistencies in a Pilsner. It's like the cleanest beer, so you can't just like over hop it, and if you screw up, like, oh, we'll just add some more Citra on top and people won't know. It's like, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's unforgiving. I mean, it's you got to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys do. It's very tasty. It's a tasty Pilsner.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, this one's, I believe, been featured in like 7 different Michelin star restaurants, which is always very cool.
That's
very
awesome.
cool.
I can imagine this goes great with food, the Pilsner.
Yeah, actually, Charlie Papazian, one of the godfather of craft beer,
oh yeah.
he was the very first person at our booth at the Great American Beer Festival.
No way.
When we were out there 2 years ago. Like, doors open at 5 o'clock, and he came straight to us at 4:58, and we're like, oh my god, it's Charlie Papazian. We're like, play it cool. And he came straight for us, so like he must have like saw that we were new. He'd never tried us before, and he tried the Pilsner, and he's like, this is good, and we're like, thanks
Charlie.
that's good enough. And then a couple months later, we got a request from All About Beer magazine to review the Pilsner, and he gave us a really great write-up because he had tried it, and I think that's why they requested it. So that's part of what he says. He said it pairs well with all kinds of food. We're like, that is going in all of our information.
That is going
to every restaurant.
High praise.
Yeah, that was really huge. That was a really awesome accomplishment.
So you guys also released, not too sure how far back it was, but you did a Las Tumbas Spice Stout,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And that was voted one of the 13 best craft beers to try, right, by Forbes magazine.
Yes. The veritable craft beer juggernaut.
Yes. Yes. But it was it was on the list. So there was actually a couple of others on the list. I'm not mistaken. I think KCBC had a beer on the list. Bronx Brewery had a beer on the list, and Transmitter, who we did a few weeks back, had a beer on the list. But getting back to the Las Tumbas, is there a story behind that? Is there?
Sure is.
Yeah. All right, let's hear it.
There's a story for everything. So when we were doing our Kickstarter, we were doing these like parties kind of around the city to try to like just drum up interest and kind of get to know us and hopefully give us money. So we had the black IPA and the white IPA. That's what we knew we were going to do those two. We're like, we should do another style for the fall because it was October or November is when we're doing a month-long Kickstarter. But we're like, no pumpkin beer.
Right.
Fuck pumpkin beer. Yes. Everybody has a pumpkin beer, and they're mostly shit. We agreed we're never going to do a pumpkin beer. So at the time, then we're like, all right, well, what's another like kind of holiday? Is there another seasonal we could kind of tie in? And November 2nd is Day of the Dead, and it's a very Mexican holiday, and Bushwick has a very large Mexican population, so we're like, this is kind of hopefully a nod to the flavors of our neighborhood. So that's how we kind of came up with the orange habanero chocolate stout, something that we think kind of tastes like it would come out of like the Oaxaca region of Mexico with like chocolate and spices. So we originally just called it Dia. It was like just short for Dia de los Muertos, and that was our nickname for it for a long time. But then there are like 12 different beers that already trademarked Dia or Dia de los Muertos. So we had to come up with another name, and it is so hard to find a name for a beer these days that isn't already used. I literally spent an entire day, one day. I just sat down on this couch with my laptop and was just going through like Untapped and Rate Beer and just Googling everything I could think of that had kind of something to do with like Mexico and Day of the Dead or Death or Bones or like anything I could think of. And then eventually ended up, I don't even know how I found it, but ended up with Las Tumbas, which means the tombs.
Yeah.
And I went to like the U.S. Patent and Trade Office and did a search there, and nothing was taken. Like, all right, fine, we can finally do this one. And it was actually pretty fitting because there's a bar in D.C. called the Tombs that's been around for like 200 years, like a really, really old bar. And Eric's wife used to work there. And we're like, all right, this is kind of cool. Like, Las Tumbas, the Tombs, there you go. That's our connection for it. So we ended up working with a local tattoo artist named Dan Nelson, who works at, he's not there anymore. He was at the Rose Tattoo Parlor on Graham Avenue.
Okay.
And we're like, do you think you could make us something? Like, we like your style. And so he agreed to do it and made this kind of cool skull with a sombrero and some marigold flowers that are traditional to the Dia de los Muertos. So yeah, we're pretty happy with how that one, the look and feel of it, and then the flavor was really interesting. I still love it. I think it's in a complex style that not many people on the East Coast are doing spicy stouts. It's kind of more of a West Coast thing, which we were maybe being a little aggressive on and trying to bring it to the East Coast before we have other styles. But yeah, we learned a lot of lessons from that one, actually. That was the first beer that we did that wasn't in package. It was just draft only.
Okay.
So that one, it was a little harder to get people to try, like buyers, to buy a beer without trying it. And we would hand fill bottles here in the office, and it is very time consuming, and they're only good for a couple days. And so it was a little hard to sell it without samples. It's expensive to like start up packaging though. To have labels designed, printed, approved by the TTB, to have 6-packs designed, cases, magnets, 24-pack carriers, keg collars. Like, it's a lot of money to start up one new beer style. So we resisted doing that because we're like, let's just give it a shot with this one and not go into package. But I think that's a big lesson for something like that. Like, people really wanted to try samples, and I think it would have done probably even better in package than on draft. So we tried to cut a corner by not spending money up front on the packaging, but I think in the long run it might have hurt us.
So for this new one, now that you've done it, a couple times and you've learned all these lessons, do you feel like it's gotten quicker, easier, like you have a better take on how to get there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with our packaging, we've kind of hit a nice template of how our beer styles work with packaging and kind of the look and feel of them. They're distinctive enough within the different styles. They stand out very, very much so, like the white IPA, Pilsner, and Black Pale Ale. But now when we have the new one, it's definitely going to pop out with the bright sky blue packaging, but it still fits with the others. So you can tell those are all the same brewery.
Right.
So now with this one, we worked with another new designers, one of our friends, and we kind of came up with a different script for the name of the beer, for Skyliner. Took a little more Art Deco inspiration for like Empire State Building. Kind of the architecture of New York City is a little more Art Deco inspired. So that's where the Skyliner name kind of comes from. As we were saying, we were up on our roof deck earlier, and
Yeah.
Skyliner is very much inspired by our roof deck. You can see the whole skyline of New York City
Very nice view.
from the all the way down in Battery City up to kind of Central Park, really, uninterrupted. And we go up there pretty often to kind of escape our office and have, if we're having like a really rough day, sometimes we'll just like take a beer up there and like take a moment. And we've actually had some actual breakthroughs, and kind of a change of scenery can help unclutter the mind sometimes. And we kind of think like higher elevation for higher thinking. That's kind of like
Sure.
what we think sometimes, and it's worked. So it's been fun to kind of think about that. We've been trying to come up with a name for it for a long time, like roof deck beer is taken, rooftop beer is taken, like everything is taken.
Skyliner sounds better though.
Thank you. Well, it only took us like a year to come up with that name.
It's worth the wait.
And then it wasn't taken either. Like,
Well, now it is.
yeah, now it's been registered. No one else is allowed to take it. But even Skyline is taken. So ours is like a little twist on that. But yeah, it takes a long time for us when we brew at 110 barrels at a time. It takes a long time to really figure out what beer we're going to commit to. And for us, it's been slow and steady. Like we just introduced we've had 4 beers in 2.5 years. Like most breweries start with like 8,
Yeah.
like off the bat.
Yeah.
So it's been frustrating sometimes because everyone always wants what's new. Like what's new? Like we still have our same beers and they're great and you should drink them. Like you don't need to always have something new to appreciate like what's in your glass, what's already doing it for you.
Right.
So so it's been a little frustrating sometimes because people expect you to do new things, and they'll lose interest if you're not doing new things in this kind of craft beer scene. But for us, that's how we get into like Michelin star restaurants, because they want consistency.
Yeah.
They want to make sure if they put this beer on tap that you're not going to run out. It's not just like 10 kegs of it. They're not switching up their lines constantly. Like they want to make sure that you're going to have it. And so that's really played to our advantage, having at least 2 of the beers year round. That's done really, really well for us.
Yeah, how many batches do you do, like, on average a year? Since it is such a big commitment for each one.
Yeah. I think Eric is a little better on timing on this kind of thing. He does all of our operations. Basically, it's an amazing partnership. He does basically everything from getting the beer made and to the distributor. So that's scheduling brew dates, ordering packaging material, managing our finances, ordering grain. I think the other day he ordered 61,000 pounds of grain, 30 tons of grain.
It's a good amount.
He was pretty excited about that, actually. So he does all everything like that, and then I kind of take over for doing everything to get the beer sold.
Right.
So branding, creating the packaging, marketing, events, working with our salesperson. So I think at this point we're doing about a batch of each of them a month of Pilsner and White IPA,
Okay.
of 200 barrels. Last year our first year we did roughly a little over double our goal of 1,000 barrels. 1,000 barrels is what we saw as the average number for breweries in New York City to do their first year, and we ended up doing 2,100.
Oh, wow.
So we're very fortunate to be able to do that many. And then last year we did about almost 3,000, 29 and change. This year we're, I think, going to do it looks like about 15% to 20% over that. We're expecting a pretty big fourth quarter with the launch of a new style, and then we're bringing back the Black Pale Ale for fall seasonal.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah, so we'll have 4 SKUs for the fall.
Yeah, and there's something to be said. Going back to consistency. You guys have a couple of beers, but it's difficult to kind of reproduce quality over and over and over again. Where there's more room. is less margin for error. Whereas if you're making different beers all the time, you can kind of just experiment, and then it's kind of is what it is. But doing consistent styles consistently is a very difficult thing. So props to you guys for doing that. So would you guys, do you guys intend to, at any point, going back to Las Tumbas, ever bringing that back and potentially bottling it at some point?
Yeah, there's been a lot of interest in that. People have asked us about that. There's potential. We have a couple other things we've lined up that we'd like to do before we go back to that.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest priority for us really right now is opening our brewery. That is like 110% of our time. So that takes up so many hours between, we're at the landlord lawyer lease stage. We've agreed on all the terms. It's just kind of going back and forth on the 80 pages of fine print at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do that, that's when we get into the fun, 10 barrel batches. You can constantly switch them up and do new things. But actually in the meantime, before that, we're going to be launching another core year-round style. It's going to be launching in March. You're the first to hear about this too.
BTBT exclusive, another exclusive, dropping them all day today.
So going back to kind of the history of Bushwick, kind of mentioned Otto Huber Brewery, where the well is now.
Yep.
So in 1880, I believe, 80 or 82, one of those two, there was a fire at the brewery, and a wall collapsed on a firefighter named Captain William Baldwin, and he was the first firefighter to die in the line of duty for the Brooklyn Fire Department. And he's buried in the Bushwick Cemetery at the end of Evergreen Avenue, and there's a monument to him from the Brooklyn Fire Department, and I think something like 20 other firefighters are buried in that same area. And we read this back when we were doing the research on the history of brewers in New York City, in Bushwick, and that anecdote just kind of came up, and so we started looking into it a little more. Like, that's a really cool story, and we kind of think of him as like almost the patron saint of like protecting breweries in New York City, in Bushwick in particular. So we're doing a beer in his honor.
Wow.
This one's called Baldwin Lager. It's going to be a Vienna lager that we're going to launch, I believe, in March. And $1 for every case that's sold of that is going to a nonprofit called Answer the Call Fund, which benefits families and widows of people who've died in line of duty for FDNY and NYPD.
Oh,
that's
very
awesome.
cool. Very cool.
That's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really excited for that one. Has really strong roots to our neighborhood, and it's also a great cause.
Absolutely, and it's kind of like it's also throwing it back to the Pilsner throws it back to the German immigrants who came, the lager to the Austrian immigrants who came, who kind of helped build the beer scene back then. So
sure,
it's all a nice little tie-in as well.
Yeah,
and a great cause.
Well, and I think we were kind of like, what would firefighters want to drink too?
Yeah, probably not a Rockin' beer, right?
Yeah, and like probably not like a double IPA sour. Like,
no.
Let's
not most of them anyway.
Yeah, so I think like a Vienna lager fits with kind of the other styles that we're doing, and it's very approachable, and that's kind of what we want for that one. But still, a full flavored beer. It's not like watered down or anything. So it can be a full craft beer, but a little sweeter, a little maltier.
Cool.
Nice.
And now, when you guys open the brewery, are you guys going to explore canning as well?
Yeah, we'd love to do canning. I think we're interested in getting a mini kind of semi-manual, I don't know if it's semi-manual or semi-automated canning line. Not going to be doing probably a mobile canner.
Okay.
You can get semi-automated ones or even manual. We might end up, depending on how much money this whole thing costs.
Yeah, sure.
Depends on how automated this canning line is going to be. We'll probably get manual or semi-manual canning line to do like 60-ounce cans. That'll be just taproom exclusives. Probably not even for distribution. Probably just buy them on site.
Oh, wow.
They're pretty labor intensive to do that kind of thing.
Sure.
So it'll just be sold there. we're pretty excited about that. I think that's and we'll be doing crowlers, so people can get anything they want on tap that day and be able to take it home with them. But if you want to take it home like a 4-pack, then you can get the cans.
I like that. That's cool. That'll be tap room exclusive.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Will they find you behind the bar there, or?
That remains to be seen. I'm already putting in a lot of hours as it is. I imagine at some point I'll probably make a couple guest appearances.
Sure.
It's been a while. But yeah, I think so. I don't know. Even I met my wife up in Saratoga because she was bartending at like the craft beer bar called Henry Street Tap Room.
Oh, wow.
When we were up there brewing the Pilsner, and we just we hit it off and stayed in touch. And she was coming down here, and I was going up there, and but she is actually like Cicerone certified beer beer server.
Nice.
Wow.
So
Nice.
like she's like the most qualified person to bartend at our spot. So we'll see if she wants to do that too.
Oh, so it's like a beer marriage.
It is a beer family.
That's a
Yeah.
beer family. Nice.
Yeah.
My son is going to be cleaning those tanks with his small hands
Yeah.
as soon as he can.
Yeah, man. Cheap labor, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So going back to the new beer. So when can we expect? When will Skyliner be available to the public?
It should arrive here in about 3 weeks. That's when it should be done. I think our first event is going to be at Heavy Woods, actually.
Okay.
Shout out Heavy Woods.
Shout out to Heavy Woods.
On Tuesday, October 17th, we're doing a mini tap takeover. We'll have 4 styles on tap at that time. So we'll have the Black Pale Ale, the White IPA, Bushwick Pilsner, and Skyliner IPA.
Nice.
And then we're going to be doing almost an event every single night for the next week throughout Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and actually we'll be doing the Queens Beer Festival in Long Island City
Nice.
on that weekend. I think that's like the 11th and 12th.
I believe so. Yeah.
We did that last year. It was a great festival. Really liked it. A lot of great turnout. People were really interested in trying different things.
Definitely.
It was a really fun festival.
Yeah. A lot of good brews. It's
Yeah.
a great opportunity for people to try all kinds of different beers, all in one sitting.
Absolutely.
So it's good stuff.
Yeah.
So you have any other news, events, anything else you want to promote?
I think I gave you
You
everything.
gave us a lot of exclusives, man.
Definitely.
You really did. This is good stuff.
I
Well,
hope they
tell
all
us
work
about,
out.
Tell us about like other breweries that you maybe enjoy.
It's so hard because I just have my head down and just work on this nonstop. I really wish I had more time between being a new father and working on this full time.
That's
it's
full-time
something
itself.
that it's something that Eric and I actually kind of miss. He's soon to be father. He's expecting in about 2 months.
Oh wow! Congrats.
2 months. So we're pretty busy. But we used to definitely go to, especially when we travel. And we were just talking about this, about going out to Portland and visiting breweries out there. We did end up having a joint bachelor party, actually. So we have the same group of friends, and we both got married the same year. So we went down to Asheville, North Carolina for our bachelor party. And I think we went to 6 or 7 breweries down there. And that's what we want here too. It's we wanted to bring that atmosphere of all these kind of brewery hopping that we like to do when we go to Portland or San Francisco, Philadelphia, Denver, obviously Denver. We love going to these cities, and you can just hop around and try all these different beers. And that in 2013, when we first started working on this, that just wasn't possible. It wasn't even a concept in New York City that even registered at all.
Yeah.
So
Right.
now when we open, just going down the L train, it's going to be just an amazing array of breweries. It's going to be Grimm, Interborough, Braven, KCBC, Evil Twin, Queens Brewery, and Bridge and Tunnel. 7 breweries right in a row just down the L train.
That's awesome.
Yep. It's
So
amazing.
yeah, so even though I don't even get to go visit all of them very often, it's exciting to kind of be in this community of people just kind of starting up these breweries in New York City that just weren't there a couple years ago. Everyone's taking big risks. It's not cheap to open a brewery in New York City. It's we're always very jealous to hear about how these breweries open up in like 2 months in like Wisconsin or something. You're like, yeah, that's not New York City.
No, not at all.
Pay like, I don't know, here it's like $50 a square foot or something, and there it's like $50 an acre. Yeah. So it's a big difference.
It's a different ball game, yeah. That's for sure.
So it does make us a little jealous, but I mean, there's a reason people live in New York City, though. Everyone is here because, I don't know, because it is harder.
It is.
And you want to prove yourself. Like most people, I mean, a lot of people come from elsewhere. I'm from Pennsylvania and lived in D.C. And if you want like the real challenge in life, you start it in New York City. Like that's where it's gonna be tough. And if you can't take it, you go back to where you came from.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like they say, you make it here, you can make it anywhere, right?
Yeah, that's what it feels like, and we're getting a lot closer.
Now, when was the last time you had a Coors or a Miller or a Beast?
Beast has been a long time. That one I stay away from. Man. Yeah. I'm not usually opposed of like the crappy beers. I don't really mind like Miller Lite. That one's like my like go-to not thinking about it kind of beer.
Yeah.
Actually, so last year, my wife and I moved down to another apartment, and Eric helped me move in, and it was a really hot day. And after we were finished, we went to the corner bodega and just got a 6-pack of Miller Lite, and we both like slammed that 6-pack. Like we split it, and like we chugged those in like 15 minutes or something.
Wow.
Like it was just one of those days. I'm like, I don't even care. Like I need this like cheap watery beer.
Yeah.
And it did the job.
Hey,
Okay.
there it
Yeah.
goes. Does
There
the
we
job, right? Well, I mean, this has been great. This has been awesome conversation. So many exclusives dropped on the show today. So, Perry, any parting thoughts? Any parting words?
I'm just looking forward to try the rest of the beers now. Really cool sounding. I mean, the styles are great, and what I've had so far has been awesome.
Cool. And Just, anything you can leave us with?
Yeah, it was really cool hearing about like the history behind, especially the Pilsner. Your stories were very, very good. Like I like the story about the first batch.
Yeah,
that was really good.
Yeah.
And I really like the design because it's very clean and simple of all your products.
Yeah, man. And I would just like to thanks again for hosting Beer Today, Beer Tomorrow. Really appreciate being here. You guys are making good beer, and wherever there's good beer, BTBT will be there. So all I could say is thanks again, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. No, thanks for coming by. We're happy to host you and bring back my bartending spirit a little bit too.
You were killing it. I gotta say, you were killing it. Guys, Beer Today, Beer Tomorrow. We're signing out, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.
Adios.
Thanks.
We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to follow the Craft Beer Odyssey on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And also check out our website, beertodaybeertomorrow.com. Stay tuned, everybody. BTBT will be back next with a part 1 of a 2-part episode at the Well in Brooklyn with an all-star New York craft beer scene lineup. Remember, wherever you are in the world, drink local, drink fresh, repeat. Cheers.